Hello, Sean.
Hi.
Hello, Lindsay.
Hello.
I'm a Red Sox fan, and I love this Yogi Berra movie. It's,
Great. Well, we love to hear that.
Hang on, I'm signing your card.
and Fenway Park is right behind you, but you
Yes.
know that.
Oh yeah.
We'll finish it afterwards.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
We'll finish that afterwards.
Yeah, you'll finish
Okay.
it after. Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
get on air.
Well, welcome to Visual Radio, and the film is great. Now, I saw on Amazon there's like 40 books on Yogi,
Yeah.
but not a movie.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
That's
there's
so
one.
odd.
There's one now. It's coming out in theaters May
We need a
12th.
shot
Yeah,
to
they're
make
gonna
a
plug
movie.
that.
and I'm impressed. I'm impressed that there's so much information. 90-year-old man in a 96-minute film with like a minute for every year.
Yeah, that's basically the idea. Yeah. Not really, but it's worked out. I mean, there is a, I'm a filmmaker at heart, so there is this kind of 3-act structure that humans kind of crave from our earliest beginnings, and it just so happens that 90 to 120 minutes is enough digestible time for humans to typically take in a setup, work through some obstacles, and come to a resolution. And so, yes, that length of the feature-length film was perfect to tell the story.
But you put so much into the movie. There are the photos. There are it was amazing seeing, of course it's way better than Wikipedia, but it's kind of like going to an encyclopedia.
Well, it's funny you mention Wikipedia, because I like to say there are so many documents, so much content that's being made these days, and it really bothers me because I call a lot of these documentaries Wikipedia docs or wiki docs, because they're very dry, they're very boring, and they're completely unengaging. They're like, this person did this person was born, they did this, they did that, they died. Like, who cares? So with this film, our goal was really to create something that is super emotional and engaging from the start, and I feel like we did that.
How did it come about, Lindsay? Was it your idea?
It was definitely not my idea. In the summer of 2018, our producer, Peter Sobolov, was dragged by his wife to go see the Mr. Rogers documentary, and he actually ended up absolutely loving it. And it so happened that he was going to be at my Grandpa Yogi's museum golf outing the next day, and he saw my uncles, Tim and Dale, at the golf outing, and he said, how come there's no Mr. Rogers documentary but about your father? And they said, because no one has made one. And Peter said, well, can I? And Peter had previously produced a movie of Sean's, and he introduced Sean to my dad and uncles, and Sean was an athlete. He played rugby at West Point. He's an Army veteran. My dad and uncles really loved him. He's a lovely human being. They thought Grandpa would like him, and that's how the ball kind of got rolling. I met Sean a little bit after that, and then just immediately started peppering him with emails and phone calls. We got to get this person. We got to get this person. We got to get this person. You're from Hollywood. You don't know them. I'm gonna help. And that's how it went.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And when you first heard of the project, how did you feel?
Well, I'll be honest, my initial gut reaction when I was asked to direct this by Peter and Mike Sobolov was, wait, hold on a second, Yogi, he seems too perfect. Like, what's the drama? What's the story? How am I going to sustain 90 minutes of tension? And so I actually asked them, I said, this sounds very fascinating, I'm very interested, just give me a beat. So I went and read a few books, and I did some digging, and then I came to the conclusion, like, oh my goodness, this is somebody who'd been like criminally overlooked his entire life, from childhood to his grave, essentially. And so I said, yes, I want in, and I'm really drawn to stories where there's some sort of conflict between perception and reality, and there was no better example of that than the life of Yogi Berra.
And he goes across so many mediums. I mean, the cartoon, the
Everything.
commercials.
Yeah. And so many eras too. I mean, there's no one else, I think, in the history of baseball who's had a greater influence on a greater amount of key players. And this is somebody who, shook hands with Babe Ruth, was mentored by DiMaggio, played alongside Mantle, coached, Guidry and Jackson and Mattingly, and then mentored, Jeter and Posada and all those guys. So, just that span of influence is really unparalleled.
And what's really fascinating and actually quite touching after you get over the initial jolt is Steinbrenner and his lack of wisdom that you keep this guy somewhere on the team. He's too valuable.
Yeah.
That was an interesting, the firing in 1985 certainly changed, it seemed to change the Yankees' destiny a little bit, but Grandpa's too. He wasn't out of baseball. We don't get into this in the movie, but he was coaching for the Houston Astros, so he was still around the ballpark doing what he loved. But the moment George came to the museum and said, "I'm sorry," that was over. It was all water under the bridge. It was as if it had never happened. And Grandpa went back to the ballpark, and he started going back to spring training, and it gave him the opportunity to meet the Jeters and Posadas, Bernie Williams, Tino Martinez, Paul O'Neill. And as much as they were able to learn from him, I always say he got just as much in return. I think his ability to be around the Yankees at that point in his life probably added another 10 years to his life, and they were 10 incredibly joyful years from being around the ballpark again.
There's a new John Lennon May Pang movie out called The Lost Weekend.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. I haven't seen it yet. Yeah.
My friend Eric Taros in Swampscott, he's working on these Beatles films, he's part of it.
Yeah.
So just 2 weeks ago, we were doing the Q&A thing out in Dedham. And my point about this all is that Steinbrenner and Yogi, in the film, the Beatles are fighting, they sign their contract to end the Beatles, and then Paul walks into a session, and there's John, and they said, no animosity, like you said with Yogi and George. It's pretty stunning.
Yeah.
Grandpa, I feel like people said he held like the world's longest grudge, but he had a good reason for it. He didn't really hold. Once there was no reason for it, it was totally gone. It just was, back to the ballpark, back to Yankee Stadium, and it was really wonderful for my family too, because I was the oldest grandkid, and I was the only one with any memories of Grandpa at Yankee Stadium. So there were 10 others who had never seen him there, and
wow.
The fact that he went back, it was just really great to see Grandpa in that setting, and to be there and hear the people cheering for him, and really understand what he meant to that franchise was a great thing for all of my younger cousins to see, and brothers and sisters.
When he went to Houston, did he have to leave the family for extended stays?
Oh yeah, he would go down, my entire childhood up until I was in my mid-teens, Grandpa was away all baseball season, spring training, the summer. Obviously if he was with the Yankees when I was little, he was around and would, sleep at home the nights when they were in town. But Grammy used to joke that the reason they were so happily married for 65 years was because he was on the road for half of it. But he really made up for it in the winter. He was never able to go to any of our summer sports or spring sports, but he came to all my hockey games and
really?
Basketball games, like all the winter sports. Same thing with my dad and uncles growing up. He missed their summer and spring seasons, but was really very, very present during the winter sports.
So he loved seeing his granddaughter play hockey.
Grandpa's the one who got me into hockey. It
Wow.
was his fault. I was the captain of the boys team in high school, and Grandpa started taking me to hockey games when I was 5, when John McMullin was his best friend. He was the one who brought the Devils to New Jersey. He was the owner of the Houston Astros, and Grandpa started taking me to hockey games, and right around the time my parents got divorced and my mom was dropping me off at the rink while she was doing her errands, so started skating and watching hockey at the same time, and played my whole life.
Amazon seems to have that it's in Italy and America. Is that true? The film?
Amazon what?
Amazon notes that it's in Italy and America.
I don't know.
Amazon notes what?
That the
What
film
The film is
is
in
Amazon? What do you mean Amazon notes? What is that?
IMDb.
Oh, IMDb. I don't know.
I don't think it's in
So it's not. So I'm wondering, is it going to go to Japan or South America?
Yeah, absolutely. No. So Sony, just so you know, Sony Pictures Classics bought worldwide rights for 25 years. So I'll be an old man by the time I get the rights back to this film. But I'm happy with where it landed. Sony's incredible, and Sony Pictures Classics, their parent company, Sony, obviously has a pretty tight relationship with the Japanese public. So
it should do really well.
Yeah, so it'll play globally. Yeah, they're selling. They're gonna release it domestically first, and then basically how well it does here domestically will then impact how broad it travels internationally. But no, definitely Latin America, definitely throughout Asia are probably the two biggest markets. We were told that Europeans don't like baseball very explicitly when we were talking about this, so it might not play in Europe so much. But yeah, it'll play. I think it'll play in more places than people think.
My question was, you were stationed in Germany.
It was.
So is there any experience you've had in Germany where it's like soccer or any baseball at all?
I don't remember a ton of baseball, but definitely a lot of soccer. I actually was a rugby player, and I played 4 years at West Point, and then I played in Europe. I co-captained the Armed Forces Europe rugby team for a couple of years. So I played a lot of rugby. I played the Amsterdam tournament up in Amsterdam, and I played rugby all over Europe. But no, I didn't see a lot of baseball over there. But I think there are pockets of Europe where baseball is big, but it's not as widespread as some other areas.
Interesting. So there are books on your grandfather's Yogisms. My question to you is, did you hear Yogisms in the house that are never published?
Most of the ones that he said now have been published because when he was turning 80, Joe LaPointe from the New York Times asked me to tell one that had never been told before, and I told the now infamous swimsuit story, which I can tell again if
Sure.
you've never heard it. He said, Joe, he said, Lindsay, you got to tell me something that's never been done before. And I was like, oh, well, there's one the other day. I was writing for ESPN magazine, and I had come home from doing an interview with a tennis player. The story ends up in the magazine. There's a picture of the tennis player. My grandmother used to put Post-it notes on all of my stories so Grandpa could just open and take a look at them. And I used to go after my evening soccer games and steal leftovers off their stove. So I went up there, I walk into the kitchen, Grandpa's reading the magazine, and he points to the magazine. He says, this kid is handsome. You should date him. And I said, I can't date him, Grandpa. He dates a swimsuit model. And without thinking at all, he goes, you've got swimsuits. Because in his mind, there was nothing different between a swimsuit model and me in a swimsuit. Because it was just this black and white, beautiful way in which Grandpa saw the world. And he was, in fact, correct. I do own swimsuits.
That is hilarious. And thank you. That's a great one. What was it like sitting at home watching movies or whatever with Grandpa?
What you saw with Grandpa on television was very much what you got at home as well. He was the same with me and my family and my dad as he was with the waiter, with the guy at the dry cleaner, with the President of the United States. He was very fun to be around. He watched a lot of old Westerns and Seinfeld reruns. If you watched ball games with him, he was going to point out something that you never even thought to notice. So it was really cool. I think my editor at ESPN magazine, when he was convincing me to start doing baseball because I shied away from it for a long time, he said, I'm pretty sure that you've forgotten more than most of my other writers know about baseball just from listening to your grandfather all those years. And he was probably right. But he was just a lot of fun. He was a normal grandpa. We would make meatballs at the holidays and decorate the Christmas tree, and he burned all the hot dogs at our family barbecues. Like I said, he would come to my hockey games. He was a lot of fun. He was great. I was very lucky to have him until I was 39 years old.
Wow, that's fabulous.
Yeah.
Do either of you work with the museum at Montclair University?
I am on the board of the Yogi Berra Museum
Nice.
Learning Center and have been for many years, yes.
So will the university do outreach to like Shea Stadium and Yankee Stadium or the Mets and the Yankees for the film promotion?
The museum is not involved with the film per se. We have a screening in Montclair later this week that the Montclair Film Festival partnered with the museum and is donating the proceeds from the screening to the museum. All outreach to the Yankees and the Mets and whatnot has been done by the film. Not really by the museum.
Well, the museum is, I believe, the 25th anniversary. They're doing
yes. So this is that. Yes.
Yeah, so we could promote that a little.
Sure. On June 6th this year, June 6th is the anniversary of D-Day. It is also this year is the 25th anniversary of the museum, and the Yankees are doing a Yogi Berra Day at the stadium.
Wow.
We're going to give out our Yogi Berra Museum awards before the game, but it just celebrates the museum, Grandpa's career with the Yankees, and his service in the D-Day invasion. So June 6th, you can all come out.
Come out,
Berra Day.
Lindsay and I will be there.
We'll be there. You'll get a cool shirt like
Yes.
this.
Oh, wow.
If you come out, come on.
They're giving them
Yeah.
away?
If you buy your ticket through the museum, you get a shirt with your ticket.
That's incredible. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
just last couple of questions. At Yogi Berra Museum is a great Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
That's
The Twitter account, so that's good for people to monitor. And your own personal Twitter, there's a beautiful picture of the postage stamp
Yes.
and his smile.
Yes.
You look so proud of him.
Yes. The stamp was amazing. my father was a stamp collector all growing up, and he tells a story about asking his 5th grade teacher how he could get his father on a postage stamp, and the teacher said, well, Larry, you better wait a little while because he has to be dead. And the fact that we were able to get the stamp for Grandpa, my dad was just absolutely thrilled. And I do believe that Grandpa, as a 1st-generation Italian immigrant who really came from nothing, would be just blown away by the fact that he was on a postage stamp, and equally blown away by the fact that a movie about him is going to be shown in 700 theaters across the country in the very near future. I think he would just be flabbergasted.
Well, Lindsay Berra and Sean Mullin, you honor Yogi very much with this movie. As a Red Sox fan, I love it.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks
you.
for
You
being
don't
on-
have to be a Yankee fan to like it.
Not at all. Not
Thanks
at
for
all.
being on Visual Radio.
Thank you.
Thank you.